Death Stranding is a very polarizing game. If you've seen the reviews, many critics and gamers are providing radically different reviews. In gaming, there's generally an idea of what games are good and bad. Taste is subjective, but within the majority sense, especially in the AAA gaming world, there's almost always a large agreement of what is good or bad. For example, BioShock Infinite's positive reception easily outweighs its negatives, whereas Fallout 76 has an overwhelming amount of negative reception surrounding it. Death Stranding is different in where the game has no majority. Some hate it and some love it, and for rightful reasons. I lie between these two, having loved Death Stranding but also hated it. Death Stranding is set after an apocalyptic event called the Death Stranding. Earth has suffered a mass extinction with only very few creatures on Earth still alive. This event also saw the rise of breach things, or BTs, humans trapped between life and death who kill anything that is alive. In addition, a new type of supernatural-like rain called timefall rapidly accelerates time when it comes into contact with anything except very specific elements, like hitting the fast-forward button on time itself. Pockets of humans remain living in isolated shelters or in large closed-off cities called knots. You're charged with attempting to reconnect Americans to an advanced form of the internet called the Kion network and deliver items. You take control of Sam, a delivery man who ferries packages from location to location for a government-ruled company called Bridges. The United Cities of America, or UCA, have contracted Sam to travel across America, delivering packages to the surviving populace and connect them to the Chiron network. When connected, these people will have access to vast amounts of information, able to communicate with one another, and fabricate inorganic supplies using their 3D printers. This may seem like an insignificant job, but in the world of Death Stranding, it is one of the most daring positions. Those on the outside not only have to contend with BTs, Timefall, and Raiders, but also a unique infection that causes suicidal tendencies due to constant exposure to a new element called chiralium. This is a Hideo Kojima game, so you can expect the story to become increasingly more complex as the narrative progresses. Despite Sam being a nobody at first, he eventually becomes a significant figure in this world, as new information starts to be delivered in a fantastically crafted game with amazing cutscenes. The animation, voice acting, presentation, and cinematography are outstanding, with acclaimed actors such as Norman Reedus providing exceptional performances throughout the story. Characters move and act with lifelike motion, and the details into each cutscenes are something to marvel at. During my second playthrough, I noticed so many small details within the game. There is an overuse of original language here to describe many of the things in this world, and the density of the lore will leave many guessing. The game's writers did try to answer many of the lingering questions during the finale of the game, almost like placing a water tank over your head, and then after the final battle deciding to pull the lever. Even after the finale, you will need to go through vast amounts of codec entries to fully grasp the game's story. As stated, Sam is a courier, which is called a porter in Death Stranding's world. You'll spend 90% of the game ferrying packages from one location to another, with some containing essential items and other containing trivial junk. The act of doing such a task over and over can seem trivial. After all, you're the protagonist, and despite being constantly praised for this action, it can seem insignificant. But taking in consideration that everyone is isolated, most animal life has been killed off, and the rain itself can age you years within seconds, this makes a delivery man become the most important position in the world, where missing one package can mean death for another person. To combat the gameplay's tedium, the developers have included some heavy emphasis on the game's traveling system. The landscape has a variety of factors the player must take into consideration. Scanning the environment shows 3 colored dots and indicate the dangers of the terrain, whether the slope is dangerously steep, a heavy flow river is nearby, or anything in general. This makes a journey a challenge, especially when into uncharted territory. I did wish the game provided contour lines for the mountain areas, since high slopes can become incredibly annoying to walk across. It can also be a huge annoyance as your motorcycle and truck will often get stuck on the smallest rock, and unless you are driving on a completely paved road, expect a lot of vexing stops. You can also somehow climb mountains with the motorcycle like the horses in Skyrim. The game's heavy focus on traveling has led to a lot of players getting very annoyed with the system, and I'm no different. But once you adapt to the system, it does become second nature. Preparing your travel route and constructing structures for return trips become passive thoughts as you play by the game's rules. This doesn't mean that this is a perfect system, as errors will occur, but the checkpoint and save system were liberal, with ample auto-saves during missions and the ability to mostly manually save any time. If you do die, you can revive yourself with little consequence, so death really doesn't have that major of a factor here. Since traveling plays a major factor, Sam must manage his inventory. He isn't superhuman and must determine what supplies to take. This includes items for traveling, such as ladders and rope, to actual items being delivered. You can fabricate most items after the location joins the network, with some items locked behind ranks that you gain for completed missions for each shelter and not city. You must stack items on Sam's suit before proceeding when taking on a mission, and this could have been a complicated system as weight and how the items are organized determines Sam's gait and pace, but the game provides an auto-organize feature that makes the manual process completely pointless. And the resources for crafting basic items are so small that I never came across a situation where I didn't have enough resources for new boots, weapons, or travel items. Sam himself is limited in his abilities. He cannot travel continuously and must rest to regain his maximum stamina. You do have to take into consideration your boot durability, but I never came across a situation where that was a problem. The rich diversity of the two open maps you'll explore have many avenues worthy of exploration, whether it's exploring abandoned buildings or hidden paths. You can make the journey easier by creating networks of roads, generators, and other structures. To ensure players cannot take advantage of this and complement the game's world, each shelter's resources stash is isolated from one another, and crafting those structures I spoke about requires you to have the supplies on hand to do so. There is a fast travel system, but using it means leaving all your supplies behind. However, there is a system in place where players can aid one another and is one of Death Stranding's best elements. When in this world of Death Stranding, players can leave behind cargo they've lost, items in shelters, and even structures. It's an incredible system that can have one player build a private shelter that will appear in another player's world. More helpful items gain likes that remain longer and spread further into other worlds. The sense of altruism was infectious, as I would often build items and structures not for my benefit but for other players. And this system has a massively positive effect, as players can leave behind icons to warn players or provide motivational boosts that restore stamina when passing them through. This extends to combat as well, with large fights showing players' avatars from other Death Stranding worlds throwing supplies to Sam. Speaking of combat, Death Stranding plays like your basic third-person shooter with some sneaking elements. You aim the reticle and kill or subdue the target. You're encouraged to sneak and avoid combat, but in reality there is no consequence to killing things, despite the opening scene of the game telling you otherwise. Heck, the opening scene of the game highlights the importance of burning bodies in an isolated location, or they'll become BTs and cause a void out, which is this large crater in the world. But it never happened to me. In fact, I killed a lot of people and just left their bodies there with no consequence. BTs are the most deadliest of creatures you'll encounter, but they have rules that they must abide to. First, they only come out during timefall rains and snowstorms, and only when the snow or rain turns black. After a small scene, your scanner will appear and point towards the closest BT. Your bridge baby, or BB, will start to scan the location and show where the creatures are, and by standing still for a brief period will allow you to see them if you're close enough. At first, these are intense challenges as you avoid detection, and if you get close, hold your breath, until you become wise of the game's challenge. You can trigger a BT, cause a void out, run to the edge of the pool of tar, and the BTs will all despawn in the area. You also gain access to powerful anti-BT weapons that can easily kill the creature, where the only negative aspect is that it uses your blood, but you can counteract this with blood bags, which restore your health, and little creatures called cryolites, which literally instantly restore your health. These creatures that were incredibly designed and generated a large amount of fear whenever I encountered them suddenly just became big walking targets to me. Graphically, Death Stranding looks incredible. It's a perfect score when it comes to visuals, technical quality, and animation. The characters all move with incredible lifelike movements, and the voice acting complements the characters' actions. It was pure eye candy, and I really have nothing negative about the overall presentation of Death Stranding. The sound design is equally exceptional. The musical score captures every moment perfectly, whether it's running from raiders or heading into a critical area. I would say that the only issue with the musical score is that it does contain copyrighted music, which is a problem for anyone who uploads videos from Death Stranding onto YouTube. A music director from Kojima Productions did state that he is working to try and resolve this. However, seeing that my videos have been heavily claimed by companies like Merlin and UMG, I have little faith that this is going to get resolved. But despite that, the musical score is fantastic. Death Stranding is not a new genre of video game, and it's also very subjective. The game's technical achievements are outstanding, it's hard to argue against that. Death Stranding is not a new genre of video game, but it's also very subjective. The game's technical achievements and presentation are outstanding, it's hard to argue against that. The story is fantastic, with a lot of themes ranging from science fiction to even dark fantasy, but requires a great deal of reading in order to fully understand. But the game's gameplay and courier missions will be the most difficult element for gamers to come to terms with. For days I wondered even if I should give this game a score, but seeing this as a review, I might as well. Personally, I enjoyed Death Stranding and attempted to remain unbiased, seeing that I've played and loved a lot of Hideo Kojima's past works. However, I cannot say that Death Stranding is my favorite game from Kojima, but it is something that left a very massive impression on me, because it took a lot of risk and it delivered a somewhat strange project that I really can't say that I universally love, but cannot say that I really hated. It's definitely not a mediocre game, but it is something worth checking out, especially in modern gaming where more publishers are focused on delivering live service games, have baked games, and filling them with microtransactions. Death Stranding does stand above a lot of these other modern AAA games. In that regard, I would recommend that you do support this title based on that alone. So tell me what you thought about Death Stranding in the comments below. Also leave a like, that does help me out a lot, and I'll see you all next time. Stay awesome, everyone.
Once there was an explosion, a bang which gave rise to life as we know it. And then came the next explosion. An explosion that will be our last.